Greetings everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today our channel launches the episode on famous authors, and to begin with, it is the world famous Colombian novelist Gabriel Garcia Marquez that we are about to deal with today. So, Gabriel Garcia Marquez was born on March 6, 1927. He was a Colombian novelist, short story writer, journalist, and he was known affectionately as Gabo. He wrote entirely in Spanish, and of course, his works were translated in numerous languages in and around the world. And obviously, he became one of the greatest writers of the 21st century because he was bestowed upon the Nobel Prize for Literature for the year 1982 for his masterpiece 100 Years of Solitude. And something else to tell about him is that he was the pioneer of magical realism. His spouse was Mercedes, and his children were Rodrigo and Gonzalo Garcia. So let's talk about his early life. So his parents were Gabriel Eligio Garcia and Luisa Santiago Marquez Higueron. His parents moved to Barranquilla. And so he was obviously raised by his maternal grandparents, Dona Tranquilina and Colonel Nicolas Ricardo Marquez. And later, Gabriel was taken by his parents to a town called Sins, which was situated in Colombia because his grandfather was ill and shortly he died. And later, they moved again to Barranquilla and then further to a town called Circar, where his father started a pharmacy. So, when it comes to the influence that he gained during his early childhood, it was from the side of his grandparents because he was heavily influenced by his grandparents during his early development, that too very strongly. His grandfather, the colonel, was an excellent storyteller and taught him history and reality. His grandmother excited him with stories of ghosts and premonitions, omens, and portents. So, this obviously stuffed him with his source of the magical, superstitious, and supernatural way of storytelling in all his novels. So, this heavily influenced her grandson's most popular novel, 100 Years of Solitude. And now let's see something about his education. So, Gabriel Garcia Marquez received his formal education in Barranquilla, in Colombia. He wrote humorous poems and drew humorous comic strips. He studied law at the National University of Colombia. He was excited by the very idea of writing, and that too in a style similar to his grandparents, especially his grandmother's stories, right? So let's see about his work experience as a journalist. So, Gabriel Garcia Marquez began his career as a journalist in the year 1948. He wrote for a regional newspaper, El Universal, in Cartagena, and he wrote a whimsical column under the name of Septimus for the local paper El Heraldo in Barranquilla. He became an active member of the informal group of writers and journalists known as the Barranquilla Group, an association that provided great motivation and inspiration for his literary career. And he was a regular film critic for Bogota's El Spectator. So let's see a brief discussion over his novels. So, his novel In Evil Hour, published during the year 1962, was a thrilling story of a Colombian society menaced by rumor and paranoia. And then comes his famous novel or masterpiece, 100 Years of Solitude, published during the year 1967. And it obviously, like his other novels, it was published in Spanish and considered to be the novel author's masterpiece and the foremost example of his style of magical realism. And then comes The Autumn of the Patriarch. It was a brilliant narrative of a Caribbean tyrant and the corruption of power. And then comes Love in the Time of Cholera. And the novel's most prominent theme suggests that love sickness is a literal illness, a plague comparable to cholera. And his novel, The General in His Labyrinth, published during the year 1989, is a fictionalized account of the last 7 months of Simon Bolivar, who was actually the liberator and leader of Gran Colombia. The book traces Bolivar's final journey from Bogota to the Caribbean coastline of Colombia in his attempt to leave South America for exile in Europe. And then comes his novel, Of Love and Other Demons, published during the year 1994. The novel is the fictional representation of a legend that the author was told by his grandmother when he was 14 years old. And the legendary story was about a 12-year-old girl who contracts rabies but was believed to be a miracle worker with long flowing copper hair that continues to grow after death. Fine. These are actually a brief discussion about his novels, and we'll see about the themes that he deals with. So he deals with the theme of solitude because it runs through much of his works. Other important theme in many of Garcia Marquez's work is the setting of the village he calls Mecando. He uses his own town of Aracataca, Colombia, as a cultural, historical, and geographical reference to create this imaginary town. But the representation of the village is not limited to the specific area. And he portrays violence as his characters live under various unjust situations like curfew, press censorship, and underground newspapers. And he practices magical realism in his writings, which combines a realistic narrative with fantasy because he uses magical elements and events in otherwise ordinary and realistic situations, right? So these are the themes that prominently he deals with in almost all his works. And now here's a short list of the novellas of Gabriel Garcia. So they are The Leaf Storm, and then comes No One Writes to the Colonel, and then Chronicle of a Death Foretold, Memoirs of My Melancholy Hours. So now let's see about his short story collections. A few of them are here: Eyes of a Blue Dog, Big Mama's Funeral, The Incredible and Sad Tale of Innocent Erendra and Her Heartless Grandmother, Collected Stories, Strange Pilgrims, and A Very Old Man with Enormous Wings. Fine. So now comes a short list of non-fiction works of Gabriel Garcia. The Story of a Shipwrecked Sailor, The Solitude of Latin America, The Fragrance of Goa with Plinio Apuleo, and Clandestine in Child, Changing the History of Africa, News of a Kidnapping, A Country for Children, Living to Tell the Tale, The Scandal of the Century. So these are a short list of his non-fictional works, and now comes his autobiographical work. So Living to Tell the Tale. This was the first volume of the autobiography of Gabriel Garcia Marquez. The book was originally published in Spanish in the year 2002 with an English translation by Edith Grossman, which was published in 2003. Living to Tell the Tale tells the story of Garcia Marquez's life from 1927 throughout 1950, ending with his proposal to his wife. It focuses heavily on Garcia Marquez's family, schooling, and early career as a journalist and short story writer, and includes references to numerous real life events. And then later on, Garcia Marquez died of pneumonia at the age of 87 on 17 April 2014 in Mexico City. So, this is just a short presentation of the brief biographical details of the famous author Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Hope you liked the video. So, do subscribe and watch. And this is Wahida signing off.